So, one question that's really bugging me. Why did you take the key in the first place?
I wanted to see you. I wanted to see you and properly talk to you, and I knew you wouldn't let me in otherwise.
Yeah, but that's not good because it's putting us in danger. You could have flipped at any point. What about
No, I
if?
wouldn't have.
What about if I took? What about if I took someone home or something, and then you came in and saw that I was with someone else?
I just would have left.
Well, but you left anyway.
Yeah, I know I did.
But it's just
I
yeah.
know it's not.
You had no right at all to.
I know I didn't. I know I've got no right or nothing. I know that.
Well, I still you need to apologise to the girls because it's out of order.
Yeah, I know. I just don't want any trouble because the last thing I want is.
Just a short conversation between two people who used to love each other. But hidden behind it is the haunting of a relationship, twisted by control, jealousy, and violence. On the morning of the 25th of August, 2016, at a small house in the Portslade area of Brighton, England, the police arrived at the scene after a fire call. When they arrived, they discovered a smoke-filled bedroom with signs of arson, and the body of a young girl lying motionless on the bed, her throat deeply cut with a sharp object. The victim was identified as Shana Grice, 19, an office worker. Initial autopsy results showed that she died from a slit throat, and the killer also deliberately set fire to the room to conceal the crime. The person who called the police was Shana's boyfriend's father. He panicked when he discovered the body. There's a fire in the bedroom, and there's a body. It's Shana. Oh God. The investigation quickly led to a name that authorities were familiar with. Michael Lane, Shana's ex-boyfriend. In the year before the murder, Shana had reported to the police multiple times that Michael had been stalking, harassing, and threatening her. However, those warnings were not taken seriously. No one stopped Michael until it was too late. Shana Grice, born in 1996, lives in Brighton, England. She works at Brighton Fire Alarms, a company specializing in fire alarm systems. In the office environment, Shana is considered a model, responsible employee, and is loved by her colleagues for her gentle personality and lovely appearance. Shana's family was broken up due to her parents' divorce, but she still maintains a close relationship with her biological mother, stepfather, and especially her long-term boyfriend, Ashley Cook, who was with her before and after a short breakup. Michael Lane, 27 at the time of the murder, was Shana's direct co-worker at the company. They were initially close friends, but developed a romantic relationship when Shana and Ashley temporarily broke up. However, Shana and Lane's relationship quickly ended when she returned to her ex-boyfriend. To Lane, this was an insult and a betrayal. From that point on, Michael Lane's behavior began to change dramatically. The emotional disconnection caused him to develop a hostile attitude, secretly stalking and harassing Shana. Despite the breakup, Lane refused to accept Shana's return to her ex and viewed it as a personal affront. His obsession went beyond jealousy and turned into threatening behavior, leading to many stressful situations in Shana's life later on. In the early stages of their relationship, Shana Grice and Michael Lane had a relatively normal relationship. They worked together at the same company, met regularly, and dated briefly after Shana broke up with her long-term boyfriend. Initially, the two maintained friendly interactions, with no signs of serious conflict. However, when Shana decided to end the relationship and get back together with her ex-boyfriend, Michael Lane could not accept it. Although there was no immediate violence, Lane's attitude began to change. He went from initially being caring to being controlling and stalking, even though Shana no longer wanted to maintain contact. Shana had become increasingly uncomfortable with Lane's sudden and persistent presence, such as knowing her schedule, showing up near her home, or leaving behind signs of stalking her from a distance. Despite this, as a former colleague and close friend, Shana tried to remain polite and avoid direct confrontation. She did not want to create more tension in the workplace, but Michael Lane's increasingly obsessive behavior made her feel unsafe. Between February and May 2016, the threat to Shana Grice became apparent. After ending her brief relationship with Michael Lane and getting back together with her ex-boyfriend, she became the target of Lane's stalking. He began texting her incessantly, leaving messages on her phone, and frequently showing up at her home uninvited. The behavior initially was mildly harassing, but increased in frequency and severity over time. One of the first serious incidents occurred in April 2016. Michael Lane secretly copied Shana's house keys and broke into her bedroom while she was sleeping. This action left Shana extremely frightened. She reported it to the police, claiming that someone had broken into her house. But after it was discovered that she had been in a relationship with Lane, she was fined £90 for making a false statement and wasting police time. Shana continued to note unusual behavior. Lane waited outside her workplace, showed up near her home at night, and repeatedly tried to contact her. Despite Shana's repeated warnings that she did not want any contact, Lane continued to reach out in various ways, like leaving gifts on her doorstep, texting her an apology, or sending negative messages whenever she refused. Shana's mood began to change. She became anxious and nervous, but tried to keep her demeanor calm because she didn't want to create more conflict. She hoped Lane would stop, but in reality, things were just getting started. By July 2016, the level of intimidation had escalated significantly. Michael Lane had gone from harassment to total control. Without her knowledge, he had installed a GPS tracking device in Shana's car. Every time she moved, Lane knew exactly where she was and showed up at the right time. This constant monitoring made Shana feel stalked. Not stopping there, Lane began engaging in potentially violent acts of psychological intimidation. He burned wigs, sent anonymous phone calls, sent threatening text messages, and used strange language in his notes. At one point, he even kept a diary with bizarre content about Shana, showing a sick obsession. Shana continued to go to the police. She reported each incident in detail from stalking to break-ins, but the records lacked connections between reports, and no protective measures were put in place. Although she wrote down Michael Lane's name and asked for intervention, the authorities did not consider the incident to be an immediate threat. Those close to her said that during this period, Shana felt uneasy. She was often startled and panicked, and shared that she could not sleep well. Friends and colleagues noted a clear change in her mental state. Although she did not say anything specifically, everyone understood that something extremely serious was happening. The air around Shana grew heavy. With each passing day, the threat grew clearer, but every warning went unheeded. What followed was a series of ignored alarms, leading to an outcome she could not escape. In the early morning hours of the 25th of August, 2016, Michael Lane left his home in silence, armed with a knife, trash bags, and a lighter, all prepared. He headed for Shana Grice's home, using a previously copied key to gain entry, without leaving any evidence of forced entry. Inside the house, there was no light or sound. Shana was sleeping alone in her room, completely unaware of the approaching threat. Lane went straight upstairs, stopping outside her door. He approached the bed where Shana was still sleeping, and slashed deeply through her neck, a fatal wound that severed her trachea and carotid artery. She died almost instantly, without a chance to fight back or call for help. After committing the crime, Lane pulled a trash bag over part of the body, then set fire to the mattress and items around the bed to destroy the evidence. Smoke rose quickly, engulfing the room. The fire extinguished itself shortly after, but left behind a scene of black smoke covering the ceiling and the smell of gasoline lingering on the scorched carpet. Shana's body was discovered hours later when her family came to check on her. She was lying motionless on her bed, her lower body burned, with a single deep cut on her neck, apparently made with a sharp blade and with great force. The forensic report confirmed the cause of death as rapid blood loss due to a fatal wound to the neck. The murder took place in just a few minutes, with no signs of a struggle, no unusual noises. A crime committed quietly, thoroughly, and calculatedly. At around 9 a.m. on the 25th of August, 2016, after several unanswered calls from Shana, a relative of her boyfriend, Mr. Ian Cook, decided to go check it out. As soon as he entered the house, he immediately noticed a burning smell in the air, as if a fire had just occurred. He quickly went upstairs. The bedroom door was unlocked. Inside was an unusual and suspicious scene. The room was dark, smelled of burning, There was no fire, but there was still ash and heat. On the bed, the body of a girl lay motionless. The blanket and bed sheets showed signs of being burned. He immediately called the emergency number. The incident was treated as an emergency case of suspected fire and unnatural death. The police and fire department arrived shortly after, sealing off the scene for investigation. Initial autopsy results at the scene confirmed. The body was that of a young woman, lying on a bed. The upper body was intact, but there were signs of burns on the abdomen and lower body. The neck had a deep, long cut caused by a sharp object, penetrating the trachea and major blood vessels. Forensic medicine concluded that the victim died before the fire broke out, due to acute blood loss. At the scene, there was a distinct smell of gasoline at the foot of the bed, and part of the carpet was soaked with fuel. However, the fire did not spread strongly enough to burn down the room, possibly due to environmental conditions or suffocation. The murder weapon was not found in the house. However, in a black trash bag left near the bed, investigators discovered traces of blood, consistent with the marks on the victim's body. It is assumed that the murderer took the weapon to dispose of it and deliberately set it on fire to destroy the body and the scene. From the evidence collected, the police determined that this was not an accident, but a premeditated murder, planned and concealed by arson. Physical signs at the scene showed that the victim was murdered while sleeping, and there were no signs of struggle. After discovering the victim's body, police conducted a thorough search of Shana Grice's contacts, movements, and relationships in the previous 24 hours. Internal records quickly identified Michael Lane as an individual who had been repeatedly reported for stalking the victim. Although the previous complaints had not resulted in serious legal action, police considered him a prime suspect. Data from a GPS tracker which had been illegally installed on Shana's car placed Michael Lane near her home around the time of the murder. Surveillance cameras around the crime scene also captured a figure wearing similar clothing to Lane in the early hours of the morning. These clues helped narrow the investigation and led to the arrest. Michael Lane was arrested the same day at his workplace. During his initial interrogation, he completely denied going to Shana's house, claiming he had no idea what had happened.
So at about 9:45 yesterday morning, Shana Grice was found dead in her bedroom. Tell me what happened to her.
Don't know.
Well, when her body was found, it was clear that someone had assaulted her, and they'd tried to set fire to her body. So tell me what you know about what happened to her yesterday.
I only know what I've been told since being in here.
However, when confronted with matching bloodstains on the trash bag found at the scene, Lane changed his story. He claimed that he had accidentally discovered the body, panicked, and left without calling the police. The reason given did not match the scientific evidence.
You ain't gonna believe me, but it's up to you. In the morning, I did go to Shana's. After I'd been to Valley Road shops,
Yeah.
and I was seen going back, parked up. When I went past her road, her car was still there,
Okay.
which I knew was odd because she was meant to be. I think she had started work at 8:30, and that was about the time. It was about 20 past 8, so I knew she was about to have left for work. So I went round, walked around there. The door was open. The front door was open.
Wide open or unlocked?
No, it was open. No, it wasn't wide open, but it was like half open. So I went in there. Her bedroom door was open, but half open again, and she was on the floor.
Tell me about your thought process then, about what made you think, right, rather than just calling the police and the ambulance, I'm going to just leave.
Because I was scared. I didn't know what. You've never seen a dead body. I didn't know what was going on. Didn't know.
Okay, so let's go with this idea that you're scared. Talk me through that. What were you scared would happen?
Well, the police would turn up and think that I did it.
The voice from the security camera, the burn marks that suggested arson, and the DNA found on the evidence quickly disproved any excuse. These factors not only placed Lane at the scene, but also directly implicated him in the entire process. What he had tried to hide was completely exposed by a consistent and irrefutable chain of evidence. The final investigation determined that Michael Lane had a clear plan to stalk, break in, and murder Shana Grice, then intentionally set fire to the crime scene to destroy evidence. Electronic records and physical evidence collected were key in proving the motive and that the crime was proactive, not spontaneous. Police seized more than 100 text messages, photos, and personal notes from Lane's phone and computer. Many of the messages showed him controlling, threatening, and stalking Shana for months. In addition, Lane kept electronic diaries detailing his paranoid feelings, vengeful thoughts, and persistent obsessions related to betrayal and rejection. The notes revealed a loss of control and a desire to punish and destroy those he perceived as threats to his self-esteem. These documents not only help clarify the psychological process leading to the murder, but also prove that Lane had intended to kill beforehand, not just acted out of a state of loss of control as he claimed. The case came to trial at Lewis Crown Court in March 2017. Throughout the trial, Michael Lane sat silently, showing no emotion, and did not look towards the victim's family or anyone else in the courtroom. During closing arguments, the prosecution portrayed Lane as a dangerous individual with an obsessive tendency to control women. In addition to Shana, at least 13 other women have accused Lane of stalking, harassment, or intimidation. However, most of them were not taken seriously or were left as internal complaints. Michael Lane denied murder, admitting only to causing death in a fit of rage. He maintained that he had no intention of killing Shana and that he acted out of impulse. However, evidence of preparing the weapon, copying keys, tracking via GPS, and setting the fire after the crime, all of which he denied in court, made his defense untenable. Michael Lane was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 25 years before he could be considered for parole. Throughout the trial, he showed no sign of remorse, no apology, no tears, no look toward the victim's family.
A judge today sentenced Michael Lane, the killer of Shana Grice, who was 19 years old and from Port Slade, to a life in prison for at least 25 years before he can be considered for parole.
The defense attorney did not cite insanity, describing the defendant as emotionally damaged by the breakdown of a relationship. However, the jury did not accept any mitigating factors. Lane's actions were determined to be calculated, intentional, and extremely dangerous. Shana's family have publicly criticized Sussex police for ignoring her repeated calls for help. Her mother said her daughter had done all the right things, reporting, providing evidence, asking for help, but the system had failed to respond in time. Public outrage has been widespread. Local police have been accused of failing to respond to threats against women. Following the trial, several officers involved in the incident were placed under internal investigation, related to their failure to respond to previous complaints from victims. Public opinion expressed disappointment. If the police had acted sooner, Shana Grice would not have died. The murder of Shana Grice was not just the crime of a jealous man. It was a tragedy of silence, of the failure of the legal system, and of indifference to the obvious fear of the victim. Shana did the right thing. She spoke up, sought help, and followed protocol. But what she was met with was indifference, even punishment for raising a false alarm, when real danger was right in front of her. If you feel threatened, watched, controlled, speak up. And if you are the one on the receiving end of that call for help, don't ignore it. A timely action can prevent a tragedy. Silence, sometimes, is what leads to a person's death.